I absolutely adore Katrina and I loved having her on the show. She is the founder of Knockout Directive. She's been named a top brand expert to follow in 2024 by MSN.com. She's a branding and publicity expert. Think podcasts, stages, and she does what she does so that she can empower personal brands with the magic of public relations. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Katrina, I am so excited to have you on the show. Shout out all the way from Canada. I'm really excited. We're taking this show global, so I'm really excited that you're here. I'm so excited to dive into your business and get to know you better and hear all the things. So without further ado, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And yes, I always say we got to build international brands. So
That's
here we
right.
go. You're doing it.
Yes, for sure. Thank you for being a part of it. It really means a lot to me and to our audience. I was actually stalking your Instagram, and one thing that I love that you use this a lot in your content. You talk about being famous or feeling famous. So I'm excited to learn all the PR things from you. But before we dive into like the nitty gritty, just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you kind of founded your way to being a PR expert and what you do. And everything in between.
Well, it was felt like a long journey to get here. I had a long corporate career. It was about 10 years long before I started my business. I worked in corporate marketing and public relations. And the very last company that I worked for just was not a fit. There were a bunch of things happening in the background that made me realize, like, if these people can run a business, surely I can do the same. So I hit a boiling point at some point in that particular career and decided to just take the leap and start my own marketing company. So I was not doing what I'm doing now when I first started, which I think most business owners can relate to. Yeah, like at the time I was like, well, I'm just going to see what people need, whether that's web design, social media management, public relations, general marketing consulting. I just did it all. And that was really how I started getting my foot in the door and building a portfolio. But through all of that, I started building my own personal brand and realized how much I loved doing it. And I realized as I brought on more clients, whether they were social media management or public relations or branding, I only wanted to work with people. And if a product-based business came to me and wanted to work with me, I would want to bring the founder into the story so badly, because I really just believe that that's the most interesting part of branding, storytelling, all of that. So at the time, personal branding wasn't as big of a buzzword that it is today, but I knew that I wanted to just share people's stories. So I started just focusing on people, and then personal branding kind of became the word to use. And I layered that on with public relations, because that was something that I wanted all business owners I worked with to use. And most of them were like, what is that? And am I actually eligible? Can I actually even start doing this in my business? So that evolution has really helped me get to where I am today, where I really work with personal brands on their public relations efforts, almost exclusively now. That's really the lane that I stand in. But it was a long journey of going marketing agency, building my brand as a founder, and then realizing what my true passion is, which is public relations for personal brands and helping people feel famous.
Yeah, I love that so much. I love the vibe of helping people feel famous. I think that is it's like an energy that we all need. I think it's so important. And I also find it very interesting that you come from the corporate space, kind of doing not the same thing, but the whole same realm. Corporate America, or not America, I guess, corporate world is such an interesting place to be. Did you leave your corporate job when you were starting your business, or how did that work? How did that play out?
Yeah, so about a month before I left my corporate job to start my business, my partner, who is self-employed himself, had kind of put the bug in my ear because he knew I wasn't totally happy about what I was doing, the current state of my life. And he saw my potential before I ever did, so I have to give him a lot of credit, because he was like, what if you just started your own business? And that put the bug in my ear, but I was still like, oh, no, no, no. Like, what would I even do? Which is such a funny thing. Like, there was lots I could do, but I didn't really see that for myself. And I think once he planted that seed, it was on like this really long road trip that him and I were on. It was like a 4-hour drive. And he planted that seed. And throughout that drive, it was like, well, what would you name your business? What would it? And just kind of like blue sky dreaming a little bit. And after that road trip, I was like, oh, I actually think that sounds like a really cool thing to do. Was not thinking I was going to leave my job a month later, but some things were happening in my corporate job that just didn't sit right with me. And one day I just, for lack of a better phrase, I chose me. Yeah. I was like, okay, we're not doing this anymore. I'm going to just leave, which is not, I was like a true corporate girl where I'm like, you do it the right way. You don't leave a job to have the next one line up. You leave on good terms. Like you try to maintain all the relationships. And I did it all in a way where I never had done it before.
That's crazy.
And yeah, so I just left one day, was unemployed, and then had to start finding clients,
wow.
Which is crazy.
Okay. That is so crazy. Did you feel like in that time that you had your back up against the wall, or did you have, I mean, your partner sounds like an amazing human being, first of all. I love that story. Was there support financially there, or did you feel like, oh my gosh, I need to hustle and get this figured out? What did that feel like?
Definitely a hustle. I had very minimal savings, and we had just bought our house like 3 months before that. So I just had to trust. I just trusted something. Something in my gut told me it was all going to be fine. And I knew worst case, I could go find another job, which I did for a little bit. I got like a part-time marketing director position. And so I did that while I was also bringing in clients. So I knew I had some stable income, but wasn't like, enough for me to feel like, okay, I could do that forever. Yeah. And I was working 7 days a week, but I really hustled in the beginning because I didn't have a choice. I'm like, well, gotta pay the mortgage. And kudos to my partner actually, because honestly, he didn't even flinch through that entire period. There was never a point where he was like, so how are you gonna help pay the bills this month? Like never asked. He just knew I was going to figure it out. And I did. So
cool.
Yeah.
I love that. What a cool story. Okay. So shifting into like the world. Oops. Can you hear me? Sorry about that.
Oh, yeah. I can hear you.
Okay, cool. Okay. So shifting into the world of marketing and branding, I'm curious because you've been in that world for a long time. You probably know so much. In your mind, first of all, how would you define quote unquote branding? And then how would you separate a strong brand versus maybe a weaker brand?
Great question. Branding to me is your entire identity. So it's the visuals, it's, colors, fonts, logos, the things we traditionally associate with a brand, but it's also the messaging, the tone of voice, the verbiage we use to describe ourselves. And when we bring it to personal branding, the strongest personal brands like really know what they stand for, but still have the traditional like visual brand identity, tone, messaging to back it up. So I was actually just talking about this the other day. It's like personal brands think that we can just skip like the traditional brand part because we're people. We don't need a logo. We don't need like colors. And it's actually so false. Like we still have a vibe. Like you have a vibe, I have a vibe, and we need to convey that on our website, through our photography, through the messaging we use to even describe ourselves or sum ourselves up. So really strong personal brands treat themselves like a brand. It's this phrase I call like big brand energy. It's like treat yourself. Yeah, it's like treat yourself like you're already that big business. And what would they do? What would they have in place to sell their product or their service? Much like you or I, it's like we've got things we got to sell too. So we need to have all of these big things in place to be able to do that. So the weaker brands tend to not take that professional part super seriously. And that's what I really strive to do with a lot of my clients. It's before you're even ready for public relations and putting yourself out there, like make sure what you're putting out there is interesting, resonates, going to get eyes on it, because so often or not, you look at some of these personal brands online and there is no vibe, and we're not really sure what that person's positioning is. Talking about so many things, there's no clear identity. So really getting clear on that stuff before you try to take it to a larger audience, because if you do, you're probably not going to stick, and you're not going to see the return that you would if you would just put the foundation in place first.
Yeah, so good. I'm interested to have a conversation around the phrase standing for something, because I think, especially as women, I don't know about you, but like I see so many people take that approach differently. So some women might talk about what they've been through and they stand for the lessons that they've learned. I see a lot of other women maybe tear down other women in the process of trying to stand for something, or other women, you know, whatever it looks like. How would you define doing this the right way in your brand so that you want to find your person? I totally understand that. So you're not going to be for everyone, and repelling people is not necessarily a bad thing. But how would you coach someone on that in particular?
Yeah, I take it from like a professional personal brand perspective, where it's like, you know, we want to figure out what our unique position is, and that really is the thing you stand for. So it might be something polarizing, it might be, or it might be as simple as public relations for personal brands, where it's less about having, like, I mean, I have some pretty strong opinions, but it's less about making that the core of your message and more about bringing those into part of the story. So I think a lot of people, it's stand for something that you can be recognized for. I think that would be the second part of that phrase. Like, you know, if someone's, I always use the example of a social media manager, because I think this is a personal brand that needs this help the most. It's like, what do you stand for as a social media manager? And that's as simple as, okay, are you trying to sell people? Are you trying to sell an event? Are you trying to create a community? Are you trying to sell products? And what do you do differently that really helps you do that? And then what are the principles that come into play? Like, what are the things you stand for when it comes to selling products via social media? What are the non-negotiables? And that starts to be the thing that you stand for, as opposed to it being these kind of like hot takes or hot opinions, which we can have, but we're trying to sell something, grow a business at the end of the day. So I always guide clients in a way where it's like, well, what's actually like the core business message? And sure, we're going to attract and repel clients as part of the strategy. I always think repelling clients is such an interesting, it's not something I'm particularly comfortable with. Yeah, and I appreciate, so like I use the word famous, which I think also repels people naturally before they even come in contact with me. I think they see that and they're like, well, I don't want to be famous.
That's true, yeah.
And I'm like, okay, but are you sure? Because,
well,
you know,
maybe your ideal client does, like I see that and I'm like, hell yeah. I want
yes,
to do this.
exactly. And so it can be as simple as that. It doesn't have to be so drastic with these, like, I don't know, polarizing opinions. Yeah. We have them, but maybe we weave them into the business a little bit, where it's not like, I don't know, the personal professional brand is such an interesting one, right? Because if we were just to do our personality as our personal brand, that would look a lot different than what a lot of us are growing businesses as these days.
That's a good point. When you are like working with someone, what's your favorite way to coach them? Do you have like online courses? Do you do one-on-ones? And then also I want to get to part of the PR portion of your business as well. Like where do you find people need you the most?
Really great question. So I offer a couple different ways to work together along someone's entire personal brand journey. So from the very beginning, if someone's like, I don't have a personal brand, I want one, I don't know what that looks like, we can start there. And then after that, once that initial strategy is done, that person, you know, probably has some other homework to do after the fact. So there's a strategy, but then they've got to implement on social media. Maybe they have to build a website, get brand photography done, some of those pieces. And then you're really ready to start using PR. So for me, I have a one-on-one program and a group program, and both show the business owner exactly what it's going to look like for them to start using PR in their business.
Cool.
So yeah, super cool. When someone is like just starting out, the group program's a better option because it really shows you like, this is all of the PR opportunities available to you right now, assuming that you're earlier on in your career journey. All of my one-on-one clients, have a larger budget, which means they've been doing business for longer. They feel more confident in their personal brand, more comfortable with starting to make bigger investments and going on bigger stages, that sort of thing. Because there is such a mindset component of PR that people really need to work through before they're even ready to do that. So the group program's a great way to be like, here are some great ways to experiment first. Going on podcasts is a really great one to practice if you want to be a public speaker. Some people prefer writing more, so maybe doing different blogging collaborations or contributor opportunities to start understanding what the writing process looks like when you're working with publications. So I really try to just open it up and show people, here are all the PR opportunities available to you. You don't have to do all of them. For me, I kind of focus on three main things as being the perfect PR formula, which is speaking gigs, podcasting, and media features. They all kind of work together. Not everyone has to do all of them if they don't want to, but knowing that that's the starting place seems to help everyone kind of move along that journey in the beginning, because I really think anyone can do PR, and that's what I stand for.
That's awesome. That sounds so fun. So are you, with your one-on-one clients and your group program, are you helping them find the opportunities, or are you teaching them on how to go hunt for themselves?
Both. So in my group program, I pretty much show, but group and one-on-one, but my group program is entirely like do it yourself with my guidance. So I'm showing you, here are all of the platforms that a PR person uses to find opportunities. Here are all of the secrets that no one has, for whatever reason, disclosed on the internet in my lifetime. Here's how to do it. Here's how I would do it for my like full done for you clients. Here's how publicists do it every single day. I really like lift the veil on PR in that program. And then in my one-on-one program, it's designed to be more high volume. So for me, I'm putting together the PR strategy and the media list for that person. And with my own kind of decision making, being like, okay, these are what opportunities are available to this person. This is what I know is an accessible media target, because not everyone should be like pitching to Forbes at the beginning of their journey. So I craft some of those pieces and then train my client. In both cases, clients are trained on how to pitch. The one-on-one client gets a bit more support throughout that process, because that program's really designed to like secure as many opportunities as possible in a period of time. Whereas the group program really is, here's what's available to you. Here's how to use it. Now take it and, implement when you feel like you're ready to. And that might be during the program. I just actually had a client who did the summer cohort, and she just reached out to me saying that in January she secured 5 opportunities, which I thought was so awesome. And that just goes to show like she learned the skills back in the summer. Maybe she wasn't ready to implement right away. Like through the fall, things got busy, and then New Year's resolutions. She was like, here I am ready to start pitching. And she did. So it really is a skill you can take with you for your whole career. I really believe that.
Yeah, that's awesome. I believe so much in the power of PR, but if you were to tell someone with specific examples from your own clients, like why would someone prioritize PR in their business? What are some of the wins and the results that your clients have gotten?
Yeah, public relations really does 2 amazing things for our business. So it grows our brand awareness. So if someone's seeing like very slow social media growth because they're just relying on content and the algorithm, public relations is a great way to exponentially increase that. I have a client who is a bit further along in her personal brand journey, but she goes on TV a couple times a month. Yeah, and she'll see an increase in 100 to 200 Instagram followers every time she's on live TV. And let's be honest, like not many of us are actually watching live TV or the news at this point, but still to have that lift is great. But my favorite part of PR is actually the second thing that it does, which is brand authority. So not just getting more eyes on our business, but more like highly qualified eyes, people that want to pay us more because they look at us as the expert. So I know for myself, when I started my business, I didn't use PR for myself because I didn't think that was an option.
Yeah.
And then once I did, within a year of really like leaning into my own speaking gigs, starting to do more podcasting, I had a couple media features, I 4 times my hourly rate within 12 months. And continue to do so, just because people now see me as the expert. It's built up more and more desire for the service that I offer, and people respect the fact that, okay, I've seen her share her expertise in all of these places, so I trust her. Yeah. So that's the reason why I tell people, like, hey, brand awareness is great, but what we really want to do is have more authority. We want to be seen as the go-to. So that's my personal favorite part of it, for sure.
Yeah, when I was looking at your Instagram, it's interesting. It's just instinctual. I thought the same thing. Like, I was like, oh, I've seen her now on stages. I've seen her speak in front of people. And it's like, it's the same power that you have when you post a testimonial or a snapshot of a message. I just feel like there's so much social proof, and we are pack animals. So if I see that you're on stages and you're in front of people, I automatically think like, oh, this is her niche. She can get herself up there. She can get me up there. Like, she knows what she's talking about. So I think there is so much power there, without giving too much away or asking you too much, because we're all going to pay you to get into your programs. Where would you tell like someone to start? What is the best like beginner advice of how we can, if we're not people that are going on podcasts yet, et cetera, where would you tell us to start?
Yeah, start with your own platform. And I know that sounds so simple, but we all have this amazing tool in front of us where we can record our own talking to the camera videos and just getting comfortable, like getting words out of our body. Going on a podcast and answering questions, or like being at an event or on live TV and answering questions, is actually challenging. Like, we have to think about, our answer on the spot. We have things that we want to say, and we want to make sure we get the sound bite in. And then if we don't, we're like disappointed in ourselves. So a perfect way to start is by just practicing that using our own platforms. And if we have a smaller audience, then the stakes are smaller. So we can just start to build our confidence by doing that and seeing what our own audience reaction is. It's always positive. People love to see the people that they follow speaking directly to them, even if we feel like, oh, I should have brushed my hair before I did that one or whatever. There's times I'm like, oh my gosh, like I can't believe I just did that in my full like sweatsuit. But people love that stuff. And the more comfortable you can kind of get just like riffing on your own platforms, the easier it's going to be to then go on a podcast and start to share your perspective that way. But it also like helps you understand what you actually want to talk about. Like, I'll go back to the example of the social media manager. It's like, there are so many things that you can say about social media. So what are you going to say that's different, that captivates people, that maybe is a bit of a hot take, that encourages people to buy from you? Really practicing those like talking points is what I would call them. Understanding what those are for you and figuring out the different ways you can speak to them is really what's going to help you be a better interviewee when you do go on a podcast or like do a keynote presentation, which are generally like 45 to 60 minutes long. So gotta get the content to fill it.
Yeah, that's really good advice. And I love that it all starts with you. I'm a firm believer in that too. I think the misconception from the outside looking in at people who are landing speaking gigs or being interviewed on podcasts is that, and I don't know if this is a misconception actually, this is just, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but like that they are being found. Is that the reality, or are they doing the work to put themselves in a position where they're being invited, or what does that look like?
Yeah, I would say it's probably the second one, them putting themselves in the position to be invited. I talk a lot about like, okay, there's really only 2 ways we can secure PR opportunities. We can receive them organically from our network, so people come to us, or we actively pitch to them. But if we're not doing the first very well, like if people aren't asking us to speak or come on a podcast, then we know that we're probably not ready to start pitching ourselves because something's not landing with people. Like, the first 10 speaking gigs I ever did in my career, I didn't pitch a single one. They came through referrals in my network. They came from, me making the right connections and really just continuously sharing my own perspective on social media. And that's what I encourage all my clients to do. It's like, you got to be your own news person first. Yeah. So tell us what the news is in your world. And then people are going to want to hear that at their own events if they're planning them, or they'll picture you on their own stage. But it's really, like I said before, communicating that yourself first and really making sure people understand what it is that you talk about. And that's what makes it really easy for people to come to you and be like, hey, I would love for you to speak at my event. Yeah. But then to your other point, if you're seeing a person who has a really high volume of opportunities, they seem to always be speaking at events, they're always kind of on another podcast or in the media, they're definitely actively pitching on top of that, or they have a publicist or someone doing that for them. High volume comes from high outreach. So constantly looking for new opportunities too, not just waiting. I mean, I feel like that's the manifestation principle. Yeah, you got to take action too. So yeah, I believe in doing both, but that's what, if you do see someone, great example, for me, I seem to have all these opportunities. Yeah, some of them are organic, coming to me because I've established myself as a personal brand that has something to say. But also I do spend, a couple hours every week looking for different opportunities, sending pitches. It's not a huge time investment, but I always have my eyes on okay, what can I do next?
Yeah, that's so good. I love that. The part that's going to stick with me is be your own news channel. Yes. What's going on in your world. I love that so much. For your first 10 speaking gigs, the ones that you got invited to, were you paid to do those? And if not, at what point did you start charging for your time being in front of other people's audiences?
The first 10 I did totally for free. I really believe that we need to start building up that experience first. Mm-hmm. Someone's not going to hire a social media manager without any proof, testimonials, that kind of thing. So same goes for speaking. You got to build up your portfolio. You have to have some reviews. You have to have content you can share. I started charging once I felt like an opportunity wasn't going to be worth it to me if I wasn't paid. Yeah. And it really came down to this event that I did in the fall where it was sold to me as kind of a big deal. Mm-hmm. It was sold to me as hundreds of people, a really flashy, sexy event. And I spent probably 20 hours refining my keynote, practicing, because I was really prepared for this to be one of the biggest speaking experiences of my life. Wow. Ended up being one of the smallest experiences of my life. And I should have seen it coming because the event wasn't promoted very strongly. And I just I kept having this feeling where I was why does it feel like this event isn't even really being promoted? But I thought maybe the person or the organization that was running it had a big email list and that's how they were doing most of their tickets. I never asked because I just trusted. Yeah. And when they came back to me and were oh yeah, so just so you know, we have about 20 people signed up, a little bit less than we were expecting. I was what? And I just thought about all the time. And honestly, I just felt like an idiot. I felt so dumb for taking so much of my own time to really invest and practice and make things funny and change some visuals. I really put my whole heart into it. And I remember just texting a mentor so disappointed that was now going to be the reality. And she was well, I guess this is your sign that now you're charging, because even if you're not charging thousands of dollars, at least you're getting something in return for the time. So that's a great message for anybody that maybe's done a ton of speaking gigs and is when do I charge? It's up to you to decide that, but you don't have to charge $2,500 right away. Right. Maybe it's $500 first and start there, and you can work your way up. I think that takes some practice too, is knowing what is my market locally what does that look like? And what are they willing to pay for events? Because there's no industry standard. It's so different. I know speakers that charge like $10,000.
Yeah, me too. It's crazy.
Yeah, exactly. So you just it really is like a self-worth thing. Like you just have to decide for yourself, what is going to make this worth it for me? And am I okay with letting this opportunity go if there's no budget? Because there's often no budget.
That's true. That's very true.
At least in the early days.
Yeah. And I know a lot of like event leaders see it as a gift that they're putting you in front of their audience. So I also understand that exchange as well. But to your point, you learned, unfortunately, the hard way, and I'm so sorry that happened. You let down.
Yeah, it was definitely disappointing. But I'm like, yeah, okay, like noted. And so since then I charge, like, it just depends. Like, it's not like, I'll still do the free thing once in a while if I think there's a really great opportunity to sell. Like if I'm confident that it's my ideal client in the audience and the event organizer is open to me actually doing a pitch in the presentation, which is not uncommon either. I'm confident that I can sell from the stage is what they say. So depending on the circumstances, I'll make an exception, or if it's a friend or something like that. But yeah, we gotta, once you like plant the seed, like for me, it's this like, sometimes I'll get this like little nudge in my brain that's like, you're gonna like ask them what their budget is and tell them what your rate is, right? And I'm like, no. I'm like, okay, but now I like can't unthink that. So like, I guess now I'm doing it.
Yeah,
and honestly, like most times people can make room in their budget for it. Just depends on, how they value your expertise at the end of the day, and if you're going to match that or not.
Yep, totally agree. Well, before we get to our final question, I have a question. How would you describe what separates you from other branding and PR experts in the game? Because I'm a content coach. So as you've already mentioned, there's a million of us. I mean, it's a whole, we could fill a whole state in the US.
Totally.
So how would you separate yourself from the noise?
For me, I did a lot of work on this when I was first kind of trying to figure out what my unique position is. And it really comes down to my willingness to share this information that no one else is sharing. And I will still like get my back up on threads or in different areas where when I see people start to say like, oh, I do PR for small businesses. That seems to be like maybe my closest competitor. But those people are still doing the PR for those small businesses and undercharging, because a true PR retainer, like to have a PR agency or publicist on retainer, is very expensive. Minimum maybe $3,000 at the minimum. I would say more like $5,000 if you're really hiring someone qualified, and that's per month. And ain't no PR campaign lasting just 1 month. So, when people are offering like small business PR, it's typically like a reduced rate. It's not enough to actually drive results. And for me, that's why I just got to a point where I'm like, people got to learn to do it themselves. You see small business owners out there like mastering their own content, hiring coaches to help with their content to really refine. The same goes for PR, because at the end of the day, I actually believe now we've entered a period where business owners are better at doing their own PR than publicists are. That's a hot take. I wonder if that'll get cut and people will rage, but I really think so, because PR is just relationship building. And as the business owner, like, you're going to show up authentically for yourself. We take our relationships seriously. I tell all of my clients, like, treat journalists like people. It's not just like transactional, like publish my article. It's how can we collaborate? Like, what can I do for your audience? Or like, well, how could I help you? Like, how is this relational? It's not so like, here, this is what I want you to write about me. It doesn't work that way. No. So yeah, I think that's really like, for me, I just don't gatekeep anything. And yeah, like my programs, I just kind of give it all. Like, I'm like, here's all the things, like, there you go. Like, no secrets. The only like leg up that a publicist or PR agency will have is that their relationships are maybe far more established or long-term than yours are. But new relationships start every single day.
Right.
And the news cycle and like the turnover of journalists in their positions and all of that, it's so rapid. So it's not the same as it was like, 20 years ago, where people were like, oh, I know the editor at this magazine. Like that magazine probably doesn't exist anymore, or the editor's already moved on to like 6 different jobs. So yeah, it's a new era, and that just means there's so many more opportunities for all of us to just do it, because having a publicist or being a PR agency doesn't give you any more credibility than being like the honest, authentic business owner, really.
That is like that the mission and the message that you're delivering is so empowering, which is what I love. Like at its core, it's like you're just handing people the tools to go and step into their power. And I love that.
Yeah. So cool. And I think it is such an empowering feeling to be able to successfully pitch yourself. Like, such a good feeling.
Yes, for sure. I love that, Katrina. So the final question that I ask all of the guests on the show is, because I'm a content coach, I'm curious, what is the best advice you've been given on your Instagram content and that has paid off for you in the long run?
I think for me, it's the raw and the real. Like and this is something I didn't do for a long time because I love a curated aesthetic, but this was actually very recent advice, honestly. A popular influencer in my area had actually shared like her raw and real content does the best. And I was like, what really is like raw and real these days? And I looked through her content, and not that this is something that I would do, but she's showing her like full range of emotions. She's like showing up with her honest opinions. And that's actually where I have now gotten to, where I'm like, we're not holding back anymore. I used to kind of like shelter a part of myself because of my like former corporate career, where I just was like, we still got to uphold like some professionalism. And now I'm just actually like, no, because I don't actually think that my audience cares about that piece. Like I actually last month I posted a photo of myself on vacation in a bikini on my feed.
I saw that. I loved it.
And I was like, wow, I actually thought that was the type of content that I would get fired for, like during my corporate career. And so I never would post that kind of stuff. Like, and I just had a personal Instagram that didn't have like thousands of followers. It was just my family and friends. But I still thought that my boss at the time was going to be like, what the hell are you doing?
Which probably was the reality.
Yeah, totally. So I just was like, I actually went back and forth on it for a couple days. Where I'm like, am I really going to post this? Like, what are people going to say? Blah, blah, blah. All the stories. Is it going to repel people? Like, and then I'm like, well, if it does, then they're not my people anyways. So we're posting it. So that was a couple weeks ago. And then I feel like since then, it's almost a little bit of a fire in me to just kind of like, I'm just going to show up as I am. I'm going to do less polished Instagram stories. I have a tendency to like talk so fast, or I like skip over my words sometimes. And I'm like, wait, okay, we gotta like say that again, because I've just blended 3 words together. And I used to like stop, re-record, and I'm like, no, we're just going for it now. And I have actually gotten in the past couple of weeks a lot of great compliments where people are like, really seeing you show up differently, or I can see that there's a spark and think it's really cool. So I'm like, okay, we're on the right track. Because all the people that have said that, I appreciate their opinions and respect them. So I'm like, okay, raw and real it is. Like, no overthinking.
I love it so much. I'm for sure gonna go cheer for you and check it out and be following you. So with that being said, where can everybody find you on all the platforms, so that we can check out all the raw and the real from Katrina?
Yes. My company is called Knockout Directive. So you can find me at knockoutdirective.com, Knockout Directive on Instagram. I'm trying to start to show up on LinkedIn a little bit more, which is like an interesting one to navigate, but I'm Katrina Owens over there. So
cool.
Love to follow the journey.
Whenever you have your findings on LinkedIn, you gotta tell us all the things.
Yes. Still working on that one. It's a tough crowd, it feels like, but working on it.
I'm like, man.
Yeah, that one still makes me a bit nervous, but I'm trying. I'm really like, we're gonna try and see what sticks.
I love that. That's very cool. Well, thank you so much for your time and your energy. I will link all of your website, your Instagram, all the places to find you below. But just thank you so much for your time and energy. I love what you're doing. I love your mission. And I really just appreciate your time being on the show.
Thanks so much. It was so great to chat with you.